I have mixed feelings about this update. One reason is because Bethesda Softworks are very good at promoting their games. Before Starfield came out, I was hooked from the beginning based on their resume, basically. They made great games, and that's an understatement. And let me just tell you what's coming out and give you some details about what it's all about. The Shattered Space expansion for Starfield delves into the chaos caused by the fanatical House of Va'ruun and their experimentation with space-time, leading to the emergence of terrifying creatures called Vortex Horrors. These enemies are described as formidable and possibly on par with Terramorphs. I'm sure you guys are familiar with those aliens. They were the most difficult, and this adds a layer of cosmic horror to the expansion. And these creatures are different because they're linked to the dimension-breaking events triggered by the Va'ruun's failed experiments, making them highly dangerous adversaries for players to face. When it comes to the weapons, Va'ruun gear is already known for being amongst the greatest, the strongest in the base game, with items like the Painblade, a devastating melee weapon, and the Inflictor, a particle beam rifle that decimates enemies with advanced energy projectiles. And it's expected that new Va'ruun weapons in the DLC will maintain this high caliber, offering powerful gear for players to discover, given the faction's history with the energy-based technology. Players can anticipate high damage weapons, possibly enhanced by the chaotic energy from the space-time anomalies. This is one thing I'm really excited about because, like I said before, Va'ruun weapons were considered the most rare, and I would spend hours farming for a Painblade or the Inflictor or whatever just to get my hands on the strongest weapon. I think this is the perfect way to get people interested in Starfield if they aren't already with this expansion because of the sheer mystery of the Va'ruun. And as for the spacesuits and gear, Va'ruun equipment has a distinct angular design and is considered highly advanced. In Shattered Space, players can expect additional rare and exotic spacesuits that reflect the faction's expertise in weaponry and armor, enhancing both the protection and the style of combat. And that's one thing I want to talk about in this video is the combat, because although this expansion does sound exciting, there are a lot of things I want to discuss in regards to how it's going to be maintained based on gripes that players have with this game, including me, because this expansion does promise a darker and more horror-driven experience, and the exploration will require mastering like certain aspects that you might not have had to master before, so it challenges you in a different way. But let's get real about this expansion, okay? This is what I want to talk about. This is my personal take, because when Starfield was first announced, it carried the weight of Bethesda's legacy. After all, this is the same studio that gave us legendary titles like Fallout, Skyrim, Oblivion. The expectation that Starfield would be that game in space, bringing the depth, challenge, and intricate design we've come to love from those franchises. When I was first anticipating Starfield, let alone when I got my hands on it, I was so excited, and I'm sure many of you were. But after hours into the game, something was missing. In Fallout, for example, the VATS. This system required smart planning with AP and skill points. You couldn't just shoot mindlessly. I mean, you could, but in order to score strategic shots and see the awesome cinematic wherein you could shoot somebody's head off or their limb was amazing. Speaking of which, there's none of that in Starfield where you can cripple enemies' limbs to the point where you shoot them off. Furthermore, you can't really undress the enemy. Like, I don't know if that was inappropriate in the gaming industry where you can undress the enemy when you take their gear. I think that was really amazing that you can do that. That's been completely stripped from this game's design. But overall, Fallout demanded strategy. In Skyrim, managing stamina during intense dragon battles or realizing that a specific shout wouldn't work in the heat of combat against certain enemies, so you were forced to adapt on the fly. There were meaningful decisions, and each challenge was tough, making you feel like a beast when you finally mastered it. But Starfield, for all its promises, fell short in comparison. The skill tree didn't demand the careful consideration, and combat lacked the thrill that made the games before it so impactful. Like, for example, I spec'd into stealth heavily, and I don't know if this is going to change. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same because stealth builds make fights too easy. The difficulty just wasn't there, so it begs the question, how will Shattered Space fix this? Now, Shattered Space takes us into a new narrative set after a catastrophic event triggered by House Va'ruun, unleashing terrifying entities like the Vortex Horrors, as I mentioned before, and this is what I'm talking about. Starfield are very good at promoting their projects, and this is actually what's getting me hype right now about this Shattered Space expansion, because the new enemies they're discussing that are coming, you can't just brush to the side. These creatures emerge from the rips in space-time, and they promise a new level of danger that's been missing from the core experience. Like, one of the enemies that I love in the original game are the Terramorphs. They were the ones that offered the hardest challenge. They force you to think in the heat of battle. They weren't just mindless enemies that ran up to you, and when you shot them, they would periodically dodge left or right because they got hit. No, they would camouflage. They would perform a psychological attack on you. So there were a lot of things that they did, and I wish that they implemented a lot of these different adverse attacks and behaviors in a lot of the other enemies. There are so many opportunities to do that with all the planets that they have, right? So from what we've seen so far, they could be the challenge that we have been craving. And let's expound on that, because it's not just about tougher enemies. I have to double down, because this is the actual aspect of the conversation that makes or breaks the replay factor in this game. It's going to decide whether or not I'm going to continually play this game. This is what ultimately made me stop. I felt nothing. Yeah, new weapons, rare Va'ruun gear, of course those are some things that we're gonna want, but new gear and weapons are a given. That's something that's already supposed to be added, and I do honestly hope that this is the balance change that we've been hoping for. As far as I know, there haven't been any patch notes in telling everything that's coming. Now, before this expansion, they did add another feature which is pretty big, I think, the land vehicle. I personally haven't tried it. I was gonna wait until this expansion to fully dive into everything new they've done a year later. This new addition allows you for faster exploration across the shattered terrain of Va'ruun's fractured planet. Now, I can attest to the fact that I do enjoy, like when I land on a planet, to travel far distances to see far reaches of the planets, to discover secret locations and hidden gear. So this is going to help with that traversal. But they said it's not just about travel. There's the potential for it to be an integral part of combat and exploration. And this can offer dynamic changes, you know, how we move through and interact with the game world. Imagine fending off Vortex Horrors while navigating dangerous terrain in a fast, rugged vehicle. This could add a fresh sense of urgency and mobility that was lacking in the base game. Come on now, I mean, I'm trying to offer some type of optimism here. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy, because I do like Bethesda, but I can't help but notice the elephant in the room, the combat elephant that's just there. It's all I think about when I think about coming back to play Starfield. The challenge is not there to me, right? Because there is redemption, right? You know, Cyberpunk 2077, it was horrible when it released. They had this huge buildup of 7 years. They had everybody thinking the game was going to be this amazing, futuristic, next-gen masterpiece, when it wasn't. It was lackluster, buggy, and unplayable at times. And only after a year were we able to get satisfaction out of it. So it's been a year for Starfield, so let's see what they've done under the hood. Let's see if they've changed something in the skill tree to make it worthwhile, to make you feel challenged and want to keep coming back and playing the game, to conquer certain enemies that are difficult. So here's the big question: will Shattered Space address the core issues that made Starfield feel redundant? Combat is where Bethesda needs to prove they've learned from the community's feedback. The new enemies, the new weapons, and the addition of land vehicles could exactly be what the game needs to help make the combat feel genuinely risky again. But until we see it in action, my skepticism is valid, I believe. Because for me, it's not about the blind hype. It's about hoping this expansion delivers the danger and depth and difficulty that makes every encounter feel earned. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Are you excited about the expansion? Are you getting it? Do you think it'll elevate Starfield to the level we all hoped it would reach? Or is it just another layer of content without addressing the core issues? If you enjoyed this conversation, then make sure you like the video and subscribe to my channel for more. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.